Brijesh, we've been talking and we've been speaking to so many of those senior journalists, people coming from different walks of life, and everybody's got, one thing to say about Manmohan Singh, that the man never had any remorse. He didn't keep any regrets with him particularly.
See, I think, one of the hallmark of greatness is also humility personified. There's a saying in Sanskrit, Vidya Dadati Vinayam. And language makes you more humbler, and the more you know about yourself, the more humbler you become, and more, had a critical appraisal of things around you. Dr. Manmohan Singh was one such example, where, the Vidya, actually Dadati Vinayam, and, you have been talking to a plethora of people. You said journalists, politicians, economists, bankers. All of them would have one good story where Dr. Manmohan Singh made them feel bigger and better than they actually were. And I think this is hallmark of a great individual. And if you remember, he was called a reluctant politician. We all remember, one of the famous repartee between, Sushma Swaraj when she was the leader of the opposition, and Dr. Singh was the prime minister, and the way the entire gig went about, people were taken aback because nobody thought that, to a couplet in which she asked, she was a fiery, feisty leader of opposition and a brilliant politician. The way she asked, कि तू इधर उधर की बात ना कर, ये बता कि कारवां क्यों लुटा, रहजनों से गिला नहीं, तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है, raising a question mark on the integrity of the government, to which Dr. Manmohan Singh replied in kind. कि माना कि तेरे दीद के काबिल नहीं हूं मैं, तू मेरा शौक देख, मेरा इंतजार देख. So this shows the kind of person he was. And there was when many people called him a reluctant politician, or like as it happens, when you are occupying a position of power, people would talk about that, you are a political pushover and all. But we also saw Manmohan Singh, the prime minister with grit and determination when it came to the US nuclear deal, where he was willing to sacrifice the government for the deal, and it was his perseverance and his steadfastness which saw the deal go through. So it's a wonderful talking about people, about somebody who has, I would say, it's a life well lived, Kabir. You have literally risen from the bottom of the barrel as far as the society is concerned. We have shown visuals of the place from where very humble beginnings, and look at the kind of meteoric rise the person has, all based on his own grit, determination, and discipline. He went on to become one of the top economists, went on to become a member of planning commission, went on to become the finance minister, the key architect of the liberalization, went on to don the mantle of being the prime minister of the country. And there's a tweet by Asim Arun, who is right now one of the ministers in the Yogi Adityanath cabinet. He was an IPS officer when he quit, took a voluntary retirement and joined politics. You go through his tweet where he's just talking about, a guy who is the prime minister. You have the entire bandwidth of the country with you, all the glitzy, sleek, vehicles which are part of your cavalcades, and the kind of longingness with which he would look at his Maruti 800 and telling Asim Arun, who was the part of the SPG, saying that, that's my car. That speaks volumes about the character. People can say that, you fake it, you do it, this, but, something which is so consistent has to be applauded and admired. I think, more than anything, I would say, I would remember him as the kind of academician he was, the kind of new vigor he brought to the Indian politics, the kind of time and, the time and place where we were when it came to liberalization, and also, being one of the most feted prime minister of this country.
He was born in undivided India, 1932 to 2024. You've seen so much now, haven't you? Kids my age used to talk about floppy disks and how, we've come so long from that particular technology. But from 1934 to 2024, the man must have seen so much, and yet he was so humble and he stuck it right there to the ground. All these anecdotes and all these, conversations will continue, Brijesh. But, people called him reluctant, people called him accidental, people gave all kinds of adjectives to Manmohan Singh. But let's look at the man as well. 10 years, the first prime minister after Jawaharlal Nehru to repeat that particular feat of completing one full term and then coming back, getting elected as a prime minister again. 10 years of that, but towards 2012, people sort of, said that he was a little bit, he was sort of like pulling himself back? Could one say that he knew what was coming his way? 2014, he wasn't going to be the Prime Minister.
Well, I think, I would say it like this, that the compulsions of coalition politics overtook the Raj Dharma, which was supposed to be the guiding principle of the coalition partner. I mean, coalition politics at that time was a completely, a different phenomena. And by the end of the tenure, his second tenure, the UPA too was plagued by a lot of scams, and talks about the 2G scam, the coal scam, and the fact is that it was not something for which he would want to remember, or he would want to take his legacy on. But I think the fact of the matter is that for a reluctant politician, many calls him, for an accidental Prime Minister, many calls him, he was someone who lasted for 10 years, and it's a no mean feat, given the fact that how governments, even when you are in absolute power with absolute majority, the kind of work you have to done to make sure that your coalition partners stay in shape and toe the line is phenomenal. It gets the best of us, or best of politicians, who are a completely different breed. But Dr. Singh, in short, whenever it came to a decision which is critical for the country, he was not hesitant to sacrifice the government. The kind of opposition which was made by the left at that point of time, when the Indo-US nuclear deal was about to be, he was more than willing. And he made it very apparent to the Gandhis, to the top brass of Congress, that if the government falls, let it fall. But I'm not going to compromise on this. This is good for the national security. And finally, the deal got through. Though other players stepped in and helped the deal get through. So I think it also speaks volumes about the character and integrity of the person. And also we have seen hundreds of instances when you see how anybody gets to power, his kids, kin, they all run amok. Usually the usual power play which we see, this thing. You won't see one such anecdote about Dr. Singh's family, full of academicians, the daughters, highly acclaimed academicians in their own right. And not a single person would come forward and say that that this is the abuse of the machinery or not. And the kind of when you are in power, everybody sings paeans of you. We have seen how the world functions and how the system functions. But to be remembered after demitting office for such a long time, and the kind of tributes which are pouring in.
You know what, Brijesh? You earlier spoke about that conversation that happened in the parliament between Sushma Swaraj and Manmohan Singh. I think we've got our hands on that little
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a treasure trove.
Let's play that out for the viewers. This is Manmohan Singh's reply to Sushma Swaraj. Take a look.
माना कि तेरी दीद के काबिल नहीं हूँ मैं माना कि तेरी दीद के काबिल नहीं हूँ मैं तो मेरा शौक तो देख मेरा इंतजार देख
And I think that little last frame where you got Mr. Advani, who's
also breaking into a smile,
and he's breaking into a smile. Amazing stuff. Many people for the longest time, because we saw Manmohan Singh, come on that wheelchair for the voting in the Rajya Sabha as well. Even when physical requirements were too much for the man, he did not push his responsibility aside. He came in there, but many people had already put this. They were waiting for this day to happen. These were sort of like headlines that were waiting to get printed. But I'm just trying to think, this is such a big vacuum for the Congress party now as well.
It is. I think, what is most important, something which we cannot overlook is the fact that, he was the one who provided a good, big moral authority to the heft of the Congress party. And the kind of work he has done, the kind of the sheer pioneer of the work which he has done is simply incredible. You look at the, if you want me to analyze, I would not go into about the kind of economist he was. Tons of pages have been written about it. The kind of stuff he has, the way he was the architect of the economic reforms when P.V. Narasimha Rao was there. Right. Tons and books have been written about. But you look at the entire gamut of his life, from the place where he was born. It was pre-partition days, the kind of horrors he must have witnessed by being there in Amritsar, which was the first front of those horrors. Punjab faced first, and then later on India during the partition days. And then, from there, building an incredibly enriching life, being a top-rated scholar, getting into the university, becoming a professor, going to World Bank, coming back as the chairman of Planning Commission, vice chairman of Planning Commission. I mean, look at the journey. It's a journey which is full of grit and determination. Goes on to become finance minister, and then left an indelible stamp on the economics and the way we pursue our economics. And we're talking about India becoming a $5 trillion economy and all. It left an indelible stamp of his intellectual supremacy on that map, and also going on to become the prime minister. I think it was an incredible journey, Kabir. When you look at the kind of, and it's full of thousands of anecdotes. Where people would talk about his simplicity, his humbleness, and it's not like he was wearing it on his sleeve to impress people, because there are people who do it. But as you see, the great people are people who make you feel superior and better human being. When you leave the room, you feel happy. And I think this was one. I mean, as Javed was mentioning about his encounters with Dr. Singh, or Karthikeya was talking about his personal encounters where he was covering Congress party at that point of time and the government at that point of time. I mean, you would never come across somebody who would say that, Dr. Singh rubbed me the wrong way. Irrespective of how junior and senior you are, if you are in that vicinity, you were treated with respect, dignity, and that spoke a lot. He was never personal, never curt, not a remark out of context, or not a remark which you say that, he's being mean or trying to hurt somebody or trying to pull down even his opponents. I mean, it's as I said, it's a life well lived, and I guess he'll be happy and smiling listening to all of us wherever he is right now.